This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett, Batty, and I, Daren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. On today's episode, we get a little vulnerable and we talk about the things that are hard right now as we're leading up and we have a few weeks before the release of Faith of Angels. And we answered 2 listener questions about distribution. Thanks for listening. This is episode 11 of Truly Independent. All right. Oh my goodness, it's Garrett, Batty. How the heck are you?
Hey. Good.
Dude,
good to see you.
I like your shirt. That's a good looking shirt there, the Carpenter.
I'm pushing the swag on Carpenter and Faith of Angels. We've launched our Kickstarter, and you can get T-shirts on Faith of Angels, and the Carpenter will. I'm sure they'll put together some swag as well.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I'm wearing my Colored Pages T-shirt from the Script Notes podcast, which is a podcast I've loved since it came out. But it feels like we're in this moment of like every day we're getting new pages and new colors with this release. So that's what we're talking about today. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about where we at in the release of Faith of Angels. But first, let's look at a couple of things. Did you see any indie movies in the last week or two?
Well, I'll tell you this. My location is different than usual. I'm in Colorado right now at a family reunion. So there are nearly 40 baddies that have taken over Avon, Colorado. And we did a screening of Faith of Angels with my family and extended family. And it was fun to watch with an audience that hadn't seen it yet and to see them get lost in the story. And it just made me super excited for 7 weeks from when we're recording to the premiere. September 12th.
Well, and that definitely qualifies as an indie movie, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks.
How about you? What did you see?
That's awesome. Well, I was at a camp with a bunch of youth in our local congregation, local neighborhood. So we were gone Tuesday through Saturday, and then it was playing catch up. So I have not even opened an app or Apple TV or anything to watch something this last week. So I have some repenting to do, and I've got some makeup videos to watch this week. I definitely will come in next week with something independent that I've watched. So apologies, listener. You come to us for the goodness of what indie films. I'll tell you what, though. It was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago that I rewatched Hunt for the Wilder People, which is an amazing film. Taika Waititi. I actually saw it at Sundance when it premiered there, and I was at the opening night or the opening screening that he did. And he and Julian and all the actors were there. And it was hilarious and amazing and such an incredible movie. I've probably watched it 6 or 7 times at this point. I love that movie. It's a little $5 million flick that was filmed out in New Zealand. It's so good. You should watch it. So let's go with that one. Hunt for the Wilder People.
That counts.
Yeah,
one of Taika's early ones, and certainly put him on the map for the career he's having.
Yeah, that was before Thor, so it went from that to I don't think it was Ragnarok. It was the first Thor that he did. No, it was Ragnarok, and then he did Love and Thunder. Crazy. All right. Well, let's look at the box office for this last weekend. As Garrett said, it's July 23rd as we're recording this. So we're a few weeks ahead, which is always nice when you're recording podcasts. You want to be a few weeks ahead for those of you that are thinking about launching a podcast. But yeah, weekend of July 19th through 21st. What's the good news?
Good news is our model works. This was Twister's opening weekend. They did 81 million, far above any Hollywood projections, which is great for independent film because projections are always sometimes scary and intimidating, and you have to know that, hey, those are projections. Those aren't facts, and there's a chance for everybody. Move down. Number 8 movie is an Indian movie, Bad News. Did 1.06 million on 477 screens. So a 2,200 screen per screen average. Just cleared 1 million and broke the top 10. That is our model. That's what we're doing with the Carpenter. That is what we're aiming for with the Carpenter. 600 screens on November 1st to try to break a million, to try to break in the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, if we
Congrats to them.
succeed, you just multiply 600 screens by 2,000, that's 1.2, right? And that should easily get us into the top 10 based on the data that I talked about in a previous episode, where it's like, if you can do 1.5, you're basically guaranteed. Anything over, like this weekend, the number 10 movie did 722,000. So if you did 750 that same weekend, you'd be in the top 10. You would have beaten them out. So anywhere in that range, 750 to 1.5, could probably get you in the top 10. And that's why we structure our releases that way, with those goals in mind. Like, we don't want to do a $20,000 opening weekend. We want to do a few $100,000. So I'm excited, man. As this releases, we're a month out, but as we're recording it, we're 7 weeks out from the release of Faith of Angels. So that's what we're really diving into today. What are the things that are on our plate? What are we thinking about? What are we working on? And there's a lot that's happening now and that's about to kick off this week and next week. And so I'm excited to dive into it. So Garrett, how are you doing? Are you sleeping?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, Darren. And you mentioned your shirt is, these script pages. It feels like we're getting new pages every day. And I think that's where I'm at mentally with this. Yeah, we're 7 weeks out from release, and that just feels like just around the corner to me. I wake up each night, like in the middle of the night, like with just like nervousness and just sweats. Like, oh, what are we doing? Are we going to pull this off? And I'm reminded, like in pre-production, right, when it's just the writer and the script is done, or we're starting to build the team, and we've got that, the white script, and that goes out. And then you start to, you hire your UPM, and the team starts to kind of come together. And I think we're at that stage on the other side of it. So we've got our team that is working. I mean, this week we've added for Faith of Angels, we've added a Utah like PR person, Michelle Moore, who's absolutely incredible and has done the opening for several independent films in the Utah market. So we brought her on, and she's already lit a fire as far as like getting the screen booked for our premiere, and starting this social media campaign in Utah. I'm getting to the details. Right now we're building the team. We're on that white page. It's very early pre-production, but the train is leaving the station.
Yeah. Some of the things that are interesting to note that have happened just in the last week or two, things like key art, the poster being locked. And, this morning we got a picture from the Purdy brothers. I keep saying Purdy brothers. Brothers Purdy. The Monteith brothers, who own Purdy Distribution, that you guys met from episode 4, sent us a picture of the poster hanging on their wall, framed up. It's like, where's mine? I want to. But that was something that just happened. They got that poster in the mail yesterday. So that's what's going to be sent out to all the theaters, so that way they can put them in their theater and people can go, oh, Faith of Angel, I haven't heard of that movie before. Trailer, we're still trying to get locked in with music and with final clearances and all the stuff we need to get the trailer out. What else has happened in the last week or two? Because you've been in it when I was up in the mountains hanging out with a bunch of kids.
Yeah. I mean, the poster, that's a big thing. Getting that key art locked and printed is a big thing. And then once that poster is done, now that poster is done, we've, disseminated the files to the parties that need them. So our social media team has the layered files for the poster, and so they'll start building. Tickets now on sale, banners and whatever. I don't even understand all the terms or classifications that they build, but essentially every asset that is needed to reach out to for social media and websites, they'll have that. The shipping of the posters is another major thing. As Purdy builds their theater list, they'll need to ship those posters out. So they'll be loading those into the tubes. Susan Tuckett, one of our former guests, talked about, making sure that the tubes are well labeled and they get sent out early enough to the theaters that that the posters get hung up in time to really promote the movie. So Purdy's working on that this week. Daren, you mentioned music, and I'd hate to paint the picture that everything is going swimmingly and we're just kind of running the play. There are lots of blue pages and red pages, to go back to the metaphor. We're having an issue right now trying to secure the music for our trailer, and so the dilemma is, at what point do we need to get our trailer out, which is, yes, 100% right now, but also we haven't secured the music that we need. And so is it worth delaying the release of the trailer, or should we recut a new trailer without music? And we're kind of in that dilemma right now.
Yep.
That's another one. So.
Yeah. One thing that you've said a number of times, whether it's on this podcast or just to me, is no one has ever released this movie before. And I just love how you have said, here's the stuff I know how to do, and I'm going to take care of those things. And you're like the most tenacious person that I know, as far as like, you'll do what it takes to get it done no matter what. But on this one, you've really gone, okay, I don't know this part, so who can I ask? And there's this principle that I love called call the destination and ask for directions. So it's like, who's already done this before? And we're friends with Brandon Purdy. And even though he doesn't own Purdy Distribution before, he's a resource. So we can call him and say, hey, what do you think we should do? And then we look at who else is having success with these types of movies. And we get Susan Tuckett, and we ask her a bunch of questions on our podcast. And we get the Purdy, the new owners of Purdy, the Monteers brothers, and say, what do we not know that you guys know that we should be thinking about right now? And then I think it was Brandon Purdy who recommended that we reach out to Film Frog, and that's how that happened. And now they're taking over a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have even thought about. And thankfully, they're taking over things like social media and building a new website. And they've got all these connections with group sales and all these things that I'm like, I've never done this before. And for those, if I haven't said it before, this is my first theatrical release. I've had a movie go out in theaters. What Comes Around, the first movie I did with Amy Redford, was in theaters for a weekend in like 4 theaters. So they basically 4-walled it and made like $4,000 in a weekend. And that was it. IFC Films did the distribution, did the theatrical release. And I think it was just to maybe qualify for better deals in streaming, or maybe qualify for some awards. I don't actually know. But to have it just in like 4 theaters in one weekend. And then we did a screening in Salt Lake where the film was produced. So I wasn't involved in that at all. That was fully IFC Films had bought the film at that point, and they ran with it. So this is my first time, and I'm sitting here going, I've never done this before. I'm more than happy to do anything, but I've never done it before. So it makes a lot of sense to surround you and I and ourselves with people that have done it before. Hey, indie filmmakers and movie lovers. This show is sponsored by Purdy Distribution. Since 2011, they've been bringing incredible independent films to theaters, like Garrett Batty's The Saratov Approach, T.C. Christensen's Love Kennedy, and McLean Nelson's Once I Was a Beehive. They've worked with top-notch directors like Mitch Davis and Mark Goodman, specializing in family, faith-based, and funny films. This year alone, they've released hits with JK Studios like Go West and Villains Inc., and have even branched out internationally with films shot in South Africa and Japan. Purdy Distribution works closely with indie filmmakers, designing personalized distribution plans, whether it's a theatrical release or straight to streaming on platforms like Amazon, iTunes, Google, and more. If you have a PG or PG-13 film ready for the world, think about reaching out to Purdy Distribution. They're approachable and knowledgeable, ready to help you visualize your film's distribution. Even if your film isn't fully polished, they can offer valuable guidance. Plus, if you need that crucial distribution piece for investor packages, Purdy Distribution can provide a letter of intent to distribute, helping you secure funding without locking you into a contract. Mark your calendars for Purdy Distribution's upcoming releases: Tokyo Cowboy on August 30th, the digital release of Thabo and the Rhino Case on September 1st, Faith of Angels in theaters on September 12th, Villains Inc. on Amazon and iTunes on October 1st, and The Carpenter on November 1st. To stay updated on these releases and more, sign up for their newsletter at purdydistribution.com. That's Purdie distribution.com. Now, back to the show.
Based on the results that we're going for, and we need to surround ourselves. What's that saying about, you are the sum of the 5 closest people to you? And I think that counts in business as well, and say, okay, who are the 5 closest people we have that we're reaching out to and getting advice and work on a project? Where do we want to be? We want to be them. And so let's bring them in and make them the 5 closest people. And it's definitely, if you asked how I'm feeling, we're right now out of my comfort zone. I think when we started this podcast, this whole series, we were very open and very vulnerable, saying we're going to do this with Carpenter, and we're going to learn along the way. We'll implement what we know, and so this is probably one of those episodes where we're like, okay, this is where we're in kind of new territory for us. If this were a Utah only release, that's a play I know, and we could make that play over and over and over and get what we want. But we've asked for different results with this particular movie. This particular movie demands different results, and so it's stretching and very uncomfortable. Cam from the Carpenter always says he says you got to get used to being uncomfortable, or I don't know what he says, but it's very similar to that. Get used to the discomfort that you're going to feel. And I'm not used to it, but I'm definitely feeling it.
Yeah. I've got 3 young boys. They're 10, 11, and 13, and they're all experiencing physical growing pains over the last months and years. And it hurts, like literally wakes them up at night. They come into our room in tears, in pain, going, how do I make this stop? And I'm like, you don't. You go through it. And we can give you some Tylenol, but that's not going to prevent it from hurting in the future. It'll wear off. That's a temporary salve for what you're going through. And it's the exact same thing. It may not be physically hard. It may not hurt physically, but the stretching and the growing and the learning, it's not pleasant not knowing things. I'm on these calls going, yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. Yep, I didn't know that was a thing. And it sucks. I pride myself on knowing the answers to everything. I like being right. It's one of my personality quirks that my wife will tell you about. But the discomfort of being in a room and being not the smartest person in the room is hard. But it comes back, for me, it comes back to mindset. Are you in this to be the smartest person in the room? Because if you are, you're never going to grow. But if you're willing to confront and deal with that discomfort and put yourself in situations where you can grow and stretch and learn, my goodness, imagine how much we're going to learn from Faith of Angels when it comes to the Carpenter, and how much we will have learned after these 2 for the next movie. At some point down the line, you could see, 3 Coin Productions really owning all of that distribution channel because you have done it, and now you can just keep going. And that's not something that happens overnight. You have to go through those experiences of growth and discomfort in order to get there.
So when I am in that position, just like you're describing, when we're in that growth period as an independent filmmaker, what are things that we can do to make sure that that we do go through those and we end up on the right side of it? When on September 12th, we have to make sure that we're on the right side of this thing. And here we are on July 23rd. We go, it feels like this might be happening, or I wish this went this way, but it hasn't. At the end of the day, September 12th, everything has to be on the right side. What are some, and maybe this is more of a brainstorm episode, but what are some tactics that independent filmmakers can do to just power through?
Yeah, I love this question. So the first thing that came to mind, there's a friend of mine named Noah Kagan. He's a brilliant marketer. He was number 7 at Facebook and number 4 at mint.com. Like, he's been in the tech industry for, 2 decades and has built a number of like 7 and 8 figure businesses on his own. So he has this thing he calls quant-based marketing. And usually we only hear about quants when it comes to like the nerdy math guys at an investment firm or a Wall Street firm. The quants is what they call them. And it's the people that are just looking at the numbers and the data all the time. But this idea of quant-based marketing, I think, helps because it gives you something tangible to hold on to. Because I think a lot of the uncertainty comes from not having anything firm to grab onto. It's like, where do you go to get some certainty and some stability and feel like you're on solid ground? And so the way he does it, the way he approaches marketing, for example, he was tasked with getting the first like 100,000 users for mint.com. And he had like 6 months to do it. So he said, okay, well, I could just hope, but that's not a great strategy, as we've talked about on this podcast. Hoping for a good theatrical release outcome is not a good strategy. So what he literally does is he just takes a simple spreadsheet and he says, okay, if I can reach out to these 100 platforms, these 100 news organizations or blogs or websites, and if I can get coverage, well, I can start tracking the actual numbers, and that's something tangible and something firm to hold on to. So he would like go, okay, well, maybe TechCrunch will write about this new app, mint.com, and they have 10 million readers. I'm making up numbers here, but okay, if 10 million people are subscribed or read things, maybe 10% will see it. So that's 1 million people. Well, maybe 10% of those will click on it. So that's 100,000 people. Okay, great. So that's 100,000. But that's not enough because maybe his numbers are off. So he repeats that, 10 times and goes, okay, I'm going to go to 10 other individuals or platforms or news organizations or websites and run the same thing. And now he has the plan. Now he can say, okay, if I'm going to get 100,000 users, I'm going to need to have 100 million people see an article about mint.com. And as soon as he crossed that threshold of like 100 million people potentially seeing it, he felt like I've done my work. So the result of that experiment was that he ended up with 1 million users in 6 months for mint.com instead of 100,000. Because like you said, like Brandon Purdy said, you can never do too much when it comes to the release of your movie, website, product, app, film, whatever. So that's the first place that I start with. It's like, okay, well, where do we get some solid ground? And I think it comes down to the numbers. We can look at tangible things like how many people are contributing to the Kickstarter, how many people did the Go Viral campaign, how many people are joining our email list, how many have expressed interest to help promote or fund the release of the movie. And we can go, okay, well, it may not be enough, but it's something. And we can go, all right, what's working? Let's do more of that, less of what doesn't work. And you just keep compounding. Final thought here, because I know I'm saying a lot of words, but the thought that we're going to go from an email list of 7,000 people to 1 million people in 3 months, I think is a little unrealistic. It's possible. If every single person that saw our movie, if we did $10 million between the two movies in theaters, and every single person that saw it signed up for our email list, we would have 1 million people on our email list. That's unlikely. My guess is it's going to be more like 10%. So can we get 100,000 people on our email list? I think so. And that's what we're aiming for, right? Then next year and the year after that and the year after that is how we work toward 1 million people on our email list. So I think it's that. I think it's grabbing onto something a little bit firmer than the hope strategy.
Yeah, I love that, Daren. And I think when we set out to make a film, like you see this a million times on independent filmmakers, and they're getting ready to make a film, and they do their social media posts, right? And it's like, hey, hashtag set life, making a movie, check it out, day one or whatever. Or it's usually not even day one. It's like, just finished my script, can't wait to start shooting. And you're going, oh, there's a lot of work there that needs to be done before you even get to that point. Or even, day one, hey, set life, look at us making a movie, we're doing it. And there's this emotional buzz, this emotional like euphoria. And like, oh, okay, we're now riding high on emotion. And after day 5 on set, you're exhausted and you're like, this is nuts. Like, I don't want to post anything. Isn't our movie done yet? And so that emotion, that high wears off. and you go, what do I have? What is going to get me to the next thing? And I think, as you've described, if you have a play, when you're in a clear headspace and you've made the play, you're just running the play, regardless of emotion. The second token that you're talking about, or the second key element, is the data. And you go, okay, we're now all emotion removed, and that should be the case with any decision. So look at the data. Let's not make film releasing should not be an emotional driven decision. It should be data driven. And so we say, okay, what is working? We go, well, we released our Unlock the Trailer campaign for this. And got almost 2,000 emails in 2 weeks. That's a big thing. Data-wise, as exciting as that is, data-wise, that's also that's a key indicator that is working. So on 7 weeks out from releasing the movie, when the emotion is like, I can't do this anymore, the data goes, not only can you, but you have to in order to get to September 12th. And here's where you need to do that.
Yeah. Well said.
It's helpful.
There's something else that came to mind. I'll try to keep this one quicker, but are you operating in the realm of reality? Because I think a lot of the times we cause the grief ourselves by saying, oh, well, it's not going to be a $10 million opening weekend, so it's not even worth it. Or I'm a failure because it didn't break the top 10 or didn't make 10 million or whatever. That's some arbitrary number. You and I came up with these truly arbitrary numbers. They're goals, but it could be any number. It could be $1 and then we'd be successful. Or it could be $100 million opening weekend and we would fail miserably, right? Because both of those things are kind of outside of the realm or the spectrum of reality that we're looking at. And so the other thing that we do is constantly check ourselves by saying, okay, before we even come up with the strategy, what's possible? What if other films in this genre done? Yeah. And go, oh, a $1 to $10 million release is very feasible. We can look at Irwin Brothers releases and other movies that are in the faith-based space and go, yeah, 5, 10, even, I can only imagine, did 83, which was a massive breakout success that I think is enough of an outlier to not include in the data and say, let's not let that skew our goal and our numbers here. But in setting our goal, we were realistic in saying, okay, $1 million in a few weeks, in the opening weeks of this, and then a couple million over the length of it, hopefully 5 to 10, is a really great goal for this movie. And that's a really great return for the investor, and we get to make more movies and everybody wins, right? If it goes above and beyond that, great, but you can't really plan on the outlier success. So keeping things in the realm of possibility helps because it dictates your strategy because you know what the outcome is and the outcome is reasonable, so that as you work the plan, like we were talking about, you're actually getting closer to that goal instead of aiming at something that isn't really going to happen. If we set $100 million on this thing with a couple $100,000 marketing budget, it's just not realistic.
Sure.
So I think we do it to ourselves, and let's just stop it.
Well, I would agree. If we have an unrealistic expectation, that would be futile, right? You say, oh, look at this incredible wedding cake. I want to make that, and I've got a cup of flour. It's not going to happen. You might have ingredients to make a cake. Great. But you have to be within the realm of, we're going to do this, what you can achieve. Faith of Angels certainly has incredible opportunity and potential, and it's in that market where these types of movies can take off, and we are fully hopeful that they will take off. But that emotion, can't be that emotion is not going to carry you through the entire campaign. Brandon Purdy always says, "Don't believe your own hype." When we released Saratov, and it did $1 million in 5 weeks on a few screens in Utah, which is great. That's a lightning bolt. That was our first film release, and we thought, hey, how's this? But this is easy. This is easy what we're doing. And so we came up, hey, we're going to release nationally. We're going to do a national campaign. And so the the out, I guess the public facing information was January, Saratoga Approach is going national, which was great. It was October when we released it. It was in theaters for 6 weeks in Utah, and then we kind of pulled it down. We didn't request any holdovers. We said January we're going national, and our supporter, our investor, was very excited about that, and rightfully so. But wanted to know, hey, why he wasn't seeing the banners on the New York City subway, and and saying, why aren't we? When do you want me on the Today Show? I go, okay, that's not going to happen. Yeah, so just don't believe your own hype. Brandon would always say, we're going to open nationally, but we're still within the realm of limited resources, independent film, and we did well with that mindset.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I've had a lot of conversations recently since we launched this podcast with filmmakers. I spend time online. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and X.com. And so I get DMs and questions from filmmakers a lot. And they're doing the same thing we're talking about here, right? But just before the movie's made instead of after. They're saying, how do I get my movie made? Tell me about it. And they say, well, it's a $5 million script. It's a sci-fi indie. And I go, great. What's your IMDb? And I don't have one. It's like, or they have one and they've been a sound guy on 2 movies. Nothing against sound guys. That's my background too. But like, they haven't done the work to earn the $5 million budget from an investor to be able to write and direct that thing. And so it's stepping stones, right? Like even great directors start with short films and proving that they can do something at a limited budget, 15 grand, 25 grand, no dollars. You look at the Robert Rodriguez's with $7,000 in a camera and a bike. It's like going around making a movie. And it's about being resourceful enough to not wait for some miraculous thing to come or someone to pick you out of the blue going, hey, I heard you had a really great script and I have $5 million. Would you like to direct it? I've never heard of that happening. And so it's really being a little bit more realistic, even at the early stages, and saying, okay, what's realistic with the resources and experience that I have now? Because if you don't have people on your team that can help you get to that $5 or $10 million release, maybe that shouldn't be the goal, because you don't have the resources to pull that off. Same thing with producing your film. If you don't have $5 million, it's a pretty big gap from 0 to 5 million. So what can you do with $500 or $5,000 from a couple of friends and a weekend? It's a better use of your time to do that and make something than to shoot for the moon and wait and it never happens.
So Daren, before this becomes the most negative episode ever, which I love. I thrive when I listen to others' podcasts, like problem solving, like, okay, how are we gonna get through this, or tell us about your tough times, and then it's certainly relatable and more human, and probably just makes me feel better about myself. But so we'll shift gears. We had a recent meeting on Faith of Angels with our distributor, and Purdy has done a great job. The play that we set out was to say, look, we're going to open in Utah on 25-ish screens, 25 or more, on September 12th. And then 2 weeks later, we'll open nationwide, 200 plus screens across the country based on whoever's demanding the movie, wherever the audience, wherever the sparks are, we're going to respond by putting the movie there. Purdy came back with a question saying, hey, we've had theaters that are requesting the movie on the 20th. And to me, this was a very interesting dilemma, this exciting things like, oh, people want to see my movie. This is so exciting. Not my movie, but the movie is so great. But the dilemma is, if we open it on the 20th, we don't have, our marketing hasn't directed people to go to the theaters on the 20th. That's not the play that we're making. So there's that balance of the emotional excitement of, yay, they want to see the movie. That's very flattering. But also the play that we set out was this, and our resources have to match the data and the emotion, or the data, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that, or is that, at what point do we need to pivot?
I always have thoughts.
Yeah. If they want to see it on the 20th, let's figure out a way to make that happen. I don't know. What
Yeah,
were your thoughts on that meeting?
I think you had the right decision, which is, well, we can't support that. That wasn't the plan. We're sticking with the plan. And I think zooming out a little bit further, the goal of any business is to be oversubscribed, meaning you have more demand than you have supply. And so if we say we have 25 theaters and people want, there's another 5 theaters that want it the same week or the week after, and we're not ready to provide it yet or support that yet, we go, great, we're doing that on the 26th. And we're not going to lose people. Like, I just don't see them going, well, if I can't have it on the 20th, then I don't want it at all. It's all a supply and demand business, as we've talked about in the past. Like, they're going to want a movie that just did $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 per screen average in its first 2 weekends. So I'm not worried about losing theaters, but for our strategy to work, we constantly want to be just under the line between demand and supply. Because if we oversupply the marketplace and we put the movie in 3,000 theaters opening weekend, well, we don't have, I mean, I don't do public math. 3,000 times a 2,000 per screen average is $6 million. We don't have 600,000 people that are going to go see this movie opening weekend. At least I don't see the data that points to that being true. And so,
because we don't have the resources to create that awareness.
right, creating that demand. That's what marketing is. It's manufacturing the demand for something that's coming out into the marketplace. And so we have the resources to say we could do 25 theaters and fill those theaters for an entire weekend. Let's do that. And then that will create the awareness and the demand for the expansion to 200 plus theaters. And then we know that we're only sending the movie to theaters that want the movie. We're not sending it to some random theater because it exists and then not supporting it with marketing, and 4 people show up because they go every Tuesday and see whatever new movie is out. That's not a good use of our dollars, because we would lose money in that scenario if only 4 people went and saw the movie.
At the end of the day, yeah, I mean, we will play to auditoriums that have 4 people in it, but toward the end of the run, like, that's fine. And if anybody wants to see the movie, we want them to see the movie. But the business side, the cost has to justify the return.
Yeah,
and
it's a
so
business.
as the movie lasts in theaters longer, it costs us less and less and less to create awareness for it. Therefore, yes, if you want the movie on week 6 of the run, here's the DCP you can download.
Yeah. It's just smart business, right? It's saying we're not going to send it out to 4,000 screens because that would cost too much.
Okay, so then if resources were not an issue, if investor group came in and said, hey, we'll give you whatever you need to open this on 600 screens or 2,000 screens, go wide, open this on 2,000 screens, is that what's the response to that? I mean, I have my own response.
My response goes back to this concept of oversubscribed. If we could show that we have that many people that want to see a movie opening weekend, that it can be profitable, then I say go for it. But we don't have that data. And so what we would need to set up is ways to do pre-sales or register your interest by putting your name on an email list saying, I want to be notified when the film comes out, or it's our own email list. If our email list had 250,000 people on it and every single one of them were opening every email and they said they wanted to go see the movie, that's data. But right now, we don't have the data showing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people interested right now. And so there's 2 sides of it. You could manufacture the demand so that you're constantly above the supply. So if your supply is 2,000 screens and each one of those needs 200 people to go see the movie that weekend, that equals at a $10 ticket, that's your $2,000 per screen average. So you're doing 2,000 screens times 200 people is 400,000 people.
Yeah.
So if we could show that there's demand from at least 400,000 people, I would say go for it. But if we can't show that in any tangible way, going back to what we first talked about, having something firm to hold on to, if we don't have that data, then we're spending money and hoping people show up, and that's a great way to lose money.
Yeah.
But what's your take on it?
That's my take exactly. And yeah, you said it perfectly. Um, if in order to show that there is demand, then it's a matter of pouring some fuel on social media very quickly, saying, let's just not talk to our own email list. Let's now reach out and essentially find new customers, which is a very expensive process. Find new customers, tell them about the movie, determine their interest, and then we get to see if we can come up with that 400,000 people on opening weekend that want to see the movie. This movie wasn't designed for that type of demand, and so it would definitely be a very pivot. It would be a significant pivot. Um, so I would probably pass on that deal. If if it were an angel investor, great. If it were somebody that wanted a return, would say you can't make a return that way.
Yeah. Yeah. To be clear, if you have that kind of money and you want to talk to us, like we'll take
Yeah,
your
that's
call.
true.
Please call Garrett
Let's
at
talk. We got other ideas. We got other movies that are designed for that.
Right. But yeah, I think it to kind of put a period on that thought,
Yeah.
you would have to figure out what's the way we're going to measure that demand. And my favorite way is with dollars. Like instead of just having someone like an Instagram post, that doesn't mean they're going to show up to the theater. It's kind of a vanity metric. Oh, well, the post got 2 billion impressions, but we sold 4 tickets. So the impressions don't matter. What matters is people buying tickets. And so I would have a mechanism where right now we're 7 weeks out. So we're already kind of past the point of this working. But like if we were a month ago and someone came to us and said, we want to actually support the release at 2,000 screens, I'd say, great, 8 weeks out, we need to have pre-sales open up at all the 2,000 theaters. And we can buy tickets. And maybe we start with 500 and then we expand and expand in the run up to the release. And then we end up with 2,000 screens if the demand is there. And we can support it because we have the money in the bank. But I would say, aside from someone actually buying a ticket, that's the only measurement that I would care about as far as do we have the demand to support a wider release?
It's fun to kind of process and think, and I think that there's a lot of value in brainstorming and going, okay, what is this movie? What do we want our future movies to be, and how do we get from small to big, and or and then big to super wide? And
Yeah.
we're going from small to big right now, which is super fun and scary, and it makes for a good episode, hopefully.
Yeah. And I mean, I hope people watch this, but like I've been all smiles the whole time. Like I'm excited for this, and I am very confident that this movie will be profitable just from its theatrical release. And the reason I'm excited for that is because my friend Carl Richards says this line, profit equals permission. And so if we can create profitable outcomes for ourselves and for the investors, especially, that means we get to make more movies. And that's what this is all about. Like, yes, we want to see our movie in theaters with all of our friends and family, but it's really just so that we can make more because we love the process of making movies. And so I'm very, very confident with the team we have, with the strategy we have, and running the play as we have been so far. This is going to end up being a very profitable endeavor. And then we got the Carpenter run on its back. And it's going to be a great year. Garrett, at some point this year, maybe November 1st might be the only weekend, but at some point we're going to have 2 of your movies in theaters at the same time. I mean, besides like Spielberg and Tom Cruise, who else can say that? Like that's pretty freaking awesome.
No, it's exciting, and if we look into the emotional side of it, it's fun to feed that emotion a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well, we
all
got
smiles
2.
too. I'm fully confident in this movie, and the data is supporting what we're doing.
Amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there.
No,
We
that's
do have
okay.
2 quick questions from listeners. So thank you guys for sending those in. If you want to send in questions, be sure to head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast. Get on the email list. We send out every single week. We send out an email with last week's episode or this week's episode, and then you can ask questions. So you just hit reply, and it goes right to Garrett. So the first one really ties into our discussion today. And it's why choose certain theaters over others?
Yeah, which factor? Yep. Um, yeah, right, Darren. I think that's what we've been talking about today, and throughout the rest of the podcast. One for this, specifically with Faith of Angels, we are choosing theaters that have proven themselves the data is there on past films of a similar genre, a similar audience that have performed well on opening weekend. And if they meet a certain threshold, Purdy is booking them with our movie. If they don't meet that threshold, don't get the movie.
Yeah, they can be part of the expanded release, but it's not the opening, right? How do you determine that? Is it a feeling, I like those guys at that one theater in South Jordan, or is there a place that distributors are going and saying, here's the data that shows this movie overperformed in these 25 theaters, and that's why we're picking these ones?
Yeah. You go to ComScore. That's a industry tracker, and that has the data of the movies and the box office and everything that a distributor needs to know. And relationships are certainly a part of that. If you're saying, hey, 100 theaters meet this threshold and we can afford to open on 25, then you're leaning into relationships, saying what is each theater going to do to help get an audience. We're working with theaters right now to match our marketing spend with them. So we'll say, hey, we'll spend a couple $100 per screen at your theater if you'll match that. And those theaters that are willing to do that will likely make a deal with them.
Yeah. What I think I want to highlight what you just said, because we are living what we just talked about, this idea of being oversubscribed. You're saying you're in the place where you have the leverage because you have the movie, you have the product that they want. And by limiting the supply, you're able to then say, okay, I get to choose the 25 theaters I want to work with at the opening. And now you have the leverage of like them bringing some marketing to the table and them bringing some dollars to the table and them helping with the release instead of just putting it on a screen for you. How cool. And it just goes to show you don't have to be, the biggest movie opening weekend. You don't have to be Twisters this last weekend or Despicable Me or Inside Out in order to command that sort of leverage if you understand and implement this principle of being oversubscribed. So it ties into our other question, which is, what's the approach for international for indie films? And I think it is very similar. It's like, is there a demand for it? And if so, we can meet that demand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We want whoever we work with to win. We want them to do well. And if it's a local theater saying, can I play the movie? We want them to do well. And if having them wait for a little bit will help them do better because there'll be an awareness for the movie, then we encourage them to wait. Then we require them to wait. But hopefully that feeling is reciprocated as well. They want our movie to do well. Internationally, same thing. We anytime I release a trailer online or some sort of indicator that a movie is coming out, I'll get half a dozen pretty standard emails from international aggregators. Say, hey, we heard about your movie. We're very interested in it. Usually it doesn't mention the title of the movie or anything because it's a copy-paste letter for every independent filmmaker out there. And you kind of sort through those until there's an actual name that somebody you can talk with. But again, it's about, for me, international releases has been about developing a relationship with an international distributor that has that same feeling of wanting to do well. Both of us, they want the movie to do well. We want them to do well. And there are terms in place to support that plan. Yeah.
One thing that we've already seen as we've had some of these conversations with international distributors, with digital distributors, is it's like, okay, but there's a lot of demand for the movie. We could point to half a dozen people that have reached out to us. Why should we give it to you? Right. And then all of a sudden, we're again flipping the table around and going, we have the control here. We have the leverage. We have the movie. So if you see value in it, prove it. Like maybe you're bringing some marketing money to the table, or maybe you're saying, I can guarantee this much. It's a minimum guarantee that we're bringing to the table. And they may not hit it, but at least we can then go, okay, we know that this person sees $2 million of value in the marketplace, whereas this one hasn't given us a minimum guarantee. Maybe we don't have as much trust and faith in them because they're not giving us numbers. And so again, it just goes back to, if you really believe in what you're doing and you have created a good product, you have the leverage. You need to act like it. Not you, Garrett, but you, filmmaker, generic, the royal you. Filmmakers, like you got to believe in your project and treat it like you have all the value. You hold the leverage, and that people need to come. If they want to partner with you, they got to bring something to the table. So I just love that you're living all of these principles that I talk about all the time to all these other filmmakers, because they're true principles, and it just reinforces that.
It's a fun process for sure, and I'm glad we get to do it.
Yeah, me too. All right, man. What an episode. I think this one might garner some good responses and some good feedback. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for another great episode, Garrett. And I'm sure we'll be talking in a few minutes about the next thing that needs to get done for our movie.
Yep. No sleep until September 12th. Thanks, Daren.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you. Episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified of new episodes and screenings, and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the review on your favorite podcast app, and be sure to share this episode with a friend. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.